Welcome everyone to painting the January duck in my Duck of the Month series. Today's duck will be skiing, and I'm going to be using my previous painting as the reference photo. I'll try to put that up in the corner when I go to edit the video. So I'm going to be also teaching you how to mix when I do these videos. I use my three most common colors that I use for mixing are these three by M. Graham. And full disclosure, I learned all of this from Debbie Freitz Petites in Watercolors That Glow. I have been going off on my own and doing mixing with these three colors the most commonly. Nickel Azo Yellow, it's pigment PY150. Phthalo Cyanine Blue. It doesn't say red or green, but I think it's the green one because their other one says red. It's PB153. And then quinacridone rose is PV19. And I use these for most of my paintings now. I'm going to use my number 4 and number 6 silver black velvet. If I need to grab a smaller brush for the eye, maybe I will just grab that when the time comes. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Okay, I'm going to get started by mixing a yellowy orange for the beak. I'm going to do a very light value of yellow, so I'm going to add more water to the yellow puddle and just fill in the beak. I forgot a line right there. And then while the beak is still wet, I'm going to put in a little bit of the orange. It might need a little more of the red pigment. Okay. A little more yellow. This is called mixing on the paper. There I took away some of the pigment and some of the water with a damp brush. And all I do is I rinse my brush in water and then I just get all of it off. And now it's just damp. And you swipe it across and it picks up water. Okay, I'm going to let that dry. Then I'm going to move on to a place that doesn't have any paint on it yet because I don't want to paint next to the beak because whatever I paint here will bleed onto the beak. So I'm going to go ahead and just skip to this area. And I'm going to mix a brown for that. So I'm going to grab some yellow. And I'm going to grab some red and make an orange. Rinse out my brush and add a little blue, which turned it green. And if you have a color wheel, you'll see that red is opposite green on the color wheel. So we add a little red to make a brown. I like this brown for a first layer, so I'm going to go ahead and put it on. More water so it spreads. Now while this is still wet, I'm going to start adding some blues and reds so that I get some more of this shadow in here. So I want it to be a little darker up here. I know it looks funny to have blue right there. And then around the neck, because the neck is bent there. And I'm going to add a little red. Spread that around. See how it's turning brown? I am fascinated by mixing colors. A little yellow. A little more of the first color that I made. It's kind of a burnt sienna. And a little more dark up here, a little more blue. When it's wet, you can just tap it on and it will spread itself. Okay. Now, since something is not, this is wet and this is wet, I'm going to go ahead and do something that's not wet, and I'm going to do the legs. So I'm going to mix pretty good orange. I'm still using my number 6 right up on the tip, barely touching the paper. I don't like to have that with so much water in it. When you have a lot of water in a wash, even as little of a wash as this, the pigment will settle all around the edges, and it will look like an outline, which I don't want. Beak has dried, so I'll go back up there with some of this orange that I made for the legs. I'm going to do some straight yellow first, right up here. And then below, I can go right over the line because that's going to be a darker color. And I'm going to add some of this orange. Damp brush, and I'm going to pick up some of that orange off the top of the beak. And then when it's dry, I'll go in with another orange and down here, and then we'll be done with the beak. Um, this is still a little damp. I don't want to do the head, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll just do the tail here. So I'm going to make a dark. I'm going to get some blue. And get some red and make a purple. Fairly thickly pigmented. A little more red. A little more blue. Now I've got a nice dark purple. There isn't a lot of water. I'm going to add a little bit of orange. A little more orange. You can see that it's dulling down. I'm going to add some yellow. Some red. And that turned it pink. A little more blue. Sometimes this is what you have to do. And now it's green. And I just went right through that blue glob. So opposite of green is red. And now we're getting somewhere. There we go. I'm going to grab my number 4, because this is a little spot here. And just fill in the space. And since I have the black out, I'm going to do the eye. Everything is dry, and I'm noticing that there is a line right here. So I just went ahead and drew that in. Now I'm going to do this part. I'm going to wet it first. I can actually go over this. Get a fair amount of water in there. I am using arches, so it's going to soak it up. I'm going to go right over the top of this and let everything blend together, and then I'll do a final coat on this, and it will have a hard line. So this has, you can see a background wash of a light gray, and then as it was drying off, I went in with some more pigment and did some streaks. So let's get that light gray on there. There, you can see it separating. I just love that. I'm just going to go right over this line with the gray. And because it's wet, it isn't going to dry hard. I'm going to leave that alone for now. I'm going to do that in after this dries. And we're going to wait for this to start drying. And when it is damp, we're going to use the smaller brush and put in the streaks. I dried it a little bit with the dryer that I have. I have a craft tool. And I'm going to now load up my brush with some pigment. And I'm going to make some little blurry little streaks here. This one's a little more dry. I'm going to make it a little darker here on the bottom to show a shadow. I'm going to wet this again. And I want to warm that up with a little bit of this tan, sort of burnt sienna color. And you see it's kind of dried onto the palette, and I can just pick it up with my damp brush and it will let go of the brush and land on the paper. It's looking a little dark compared to this one. So I'm going to add a little more water. Add more of this burnt sienna. There's still a little bit left on there, and I wanted that. That's the fun thing about watercolor is you can dab it up when you need to. Okay, I'm going to mix some of this gray with some of this orange. And that got it a little bit green, a little bit of red, a little bit more blue. I'm going to wait for it to dry and then I'll re-wet it. While this is finishing drying, I'm going to go ahead and work on the head. So we're going to mix a green, take some of this yellow, some of the blue, and I'll start off with this light green. Put a little bit of this brown in here. See how that dulled it down a little bit? Add a little more water, and I'm going to work on the head. Right onto the dry paper, go right over the eye. Go under this beak. And we're going to let that dry. And then I'll come down to these skis. Get a little bit of the gray and put it in with the blue. Well, it's the same color. A little more blue. And water it down. You can make your skis any color you want. Maybe red skis, gray skis, whatever you want to do. And you don't have to mix. You can use your palette the way you have it. You could use Payne's Gray, Burnt Umber, Sap Green. I like how the blue of the ski and the orange of the leg are complementing each other. Now I can come back up here and wet this down a little bit. And you can see how it's not pooled up. It's just dampening the paper. Now I'm going to grab some of the brown and I'm putting it on like it's fur. Because when you just look at a duck, you can't see each individual feather. Now I can do this little thing, a little bit of gray, this little tail. Too much water in there. And I'll add a little bit right at the base. Now I can work on the beak a little bit more. I want to add a little bit of darker color in contrast to the lighter color at the top of the beak. So I'm going to grab some of this orange and go like that. And I'll go right over the bill, right there. And now I'm going to rinse out my brush, tap it on the paper towel, and soften the edge. Just drag it right along the edge. I'm going to work on this wing. I'm just going to wet it, and I'm going to drop in some grays and browns. There's a lot of water on this because I want those colors to mix together, but not completely mix together. I want the browns to look like browns and the grays to look like grays. A little more brown in here. And now when that dries, it will look like a gray-brown wing. So I'm going to work on the head a little more. This time I'm going to wet the head with water first. Had a little too much water on my brush there. Spread it around. And we're going to put some shadow around the edges of the head so that it looks round and not flat. So to do that, I'm going to take the green, but darken it a little bit of red. And I'm going to plop it in right along that wet edge and let it bleed in. I'm going to also do that under the beak. Is it a beak or a bill? And the neck. And I want a little bit more. Oh no, it's okay. And a little bit around the eye. And I'm going to take some of this dried pigment and go along the beak. And then up around again. And now I want to put some yellow in here to warm it up a little. It's a little too cool. And the yellow will also push back on some of the pigment and make it move around. I'm going to go a little darker under here. Now I'm going to get my small brush, my number 4, and I'm going to go ahead and do these little straps. I'm right up on the tip of the brush. I'm holding it fairly upright. A little more on here. Watercolor always dries lighter. A little more in here. Now I'm going to do a little bit more on the chest. And I'm going to get my bigger brush. I'm going to use the brown that's already here. And I want this to be a little more vibrant. I'm going to stay away from the wing for now. And now I'm going to go over the this line. Need some more red in that. We want more of a burnt sienna. Ooh, that's pretty. And now because I'm dragging the wet onto the dry, this will dry with a hard line out here. Go ahead and just fill that little bit in. Doesn't that look better? I'm going to get this off of here with my little scrubber brush. These are really handy to have. You could also do this with a Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. You just get it wet, rip off a little piece of it and get it wet. Do exactly what I'm doing. Be very gentle because you'll mar the paper. If not. And now you can barely tell that it was there. And then if you do that and you can't get it all the way off, you can just add a background. Okay, now I'm going to do the snow. I'm just going to suggest snow. I don't want brown snow. Put a little bit of water and extend it as far as you need. The other one doesn't have it over here, but I'm going to add a little bit over here. You can add as much snow as you want. I'm going to add some of this blue-gray. I'm going to let that dry off a little bit. Add some in here. A little more blue up here. And because we mixed, you can see the colors separating out. You can move your water around to get effects. I just think it is so cool. And I'm going to wait a couple minutes. It's very watery. I'm going to wait a little bit to add the snow. So while I'm waiting, I'm going to go ahead and do this side. From the duck's chest down to here, a little bit beyond. And then do the same thing. And we're going to add salt to this. A little bit of gray. The more irregular it is along the edges, the better. And now the salt is going to disperse that pigment. I'm going to add some there. And then you have to wait. You have to let it dry naturally or it won't do anything. Sometimes I think I time it perfectly and I've timed it terribly. And sometimes I have no idea what I'm doing and I did it perfectly. So really it's just kind of take your chances. See you soon. While that's working its magic, I grabbed a 00 and I'm going to do the beak now. So I have a damp brush. I wiped off the bead of water and I'm going to just stick it in this gray, maybe a little more water. And I'm going to go be careful not to drag my hand through the wet paint. Actually, I'm going to turn it because I know I'm going to lose myself. I'm going to draw a line there. And underneath that line, I'm going to take some clear water, dab it off a little bit, and I'm going to smear it a little. Just with a little bit of water down underneath that line. And I'm going to do the same thing on the tip of the beak. It's got a little point to it. I'm going to darken the eye. I'm going to enlarge it a little bit too. That looks a little bit better. And I'm going to put in the nostrils, and they're just two little. I'm going to go up underneath. Oops, I did it. And go up under here and straighten out this. This is easy to fix. And you can already see that the salt is working its magic. I'm going to add a little bit more right here. I lost the white here right off the bat. First painting, I lost the white. So I'm going to wet it, and I'm just going to add a little bit of some white gouache. Right now I'm using Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed proof white, and I'm just going to add some in. Not all over the whole thing. Like, don't color it in, because I want the dark from underneath to show. I just didn't want it to be that gray all over the place. Okay, that's all I did. Now around the eye, I'm going to add a little bit of shadowing because the eye looks very flat. So around the outside, I'm going to add some water. And I'm going to spread it out. I don't want to go on top of the eye. I want to go around the eye. Now the area around the eye is damp. And I'm going to get a little bit of the gray and go around. Now it looks more like it is inset in the head. And I think I'm going to go ahead and do one more coat of yellow on this. So I'm going to wet the rest of the head and put a little more yellow, maybe a little bit of orange. Yeah, that looks good. That was a little bit of burnt sienna. And now a little more green. I want a little more shadow up here, just to show that this face is more round. Some blue. Ooh, that looks good. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Watercolor is always an experiment. No matter what you're painting, you will learn something every single painting session. Now, while we're waiting for the snow to dry, I'm going to show you the Mr. Clean Magic Eraser trick. So I just ripped a little piece off of the sponge. I'm going to wet it in some clean water, and I'm going to wring it all the way out, get all of the water out of it. Now it's just damp, and I'm going to just swipe. Want a little more water. And dab with a clean paper towel. Now, if you do this, you won't want to put a background on. You can't even tell that anything happened. You won't want to put a background on because now you have removed that top layer of the paper. And the paint won't take there like it does on the other areas of the paper, and it will look really uneven. One final little touch is to put a little light in the eye. Just a little dot. And if you want, you can splat some white along the snow You could add a blue background for some sky. You could add bushes in the background, or you can leave it like it is. I like it kind of minimal. And there you have it. When the salt's dry, just wipe it off and you're good to go. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really, really liked painting this with you. Have a great day and see you next time.